Yeah, so today we'll talk about William Wallace, and this is probably the version of him that you're more familiar with, even though he looked a little bit more like this. Now, he was born in Elderslie, United Kingdom. I'm not sure what year it was. When I looked it up, it didn't have like a specific year, but we know that he came from Elderslie, and he rose up to be quite a prominent character in Scottish history. Before 1297, basically not a lot of people knew much about him, other than he was like a petty criminal, nothing too major. And then suddenly he rose up to be the reason why certain murders had been going on. He killed the Sheriff of Lanark. His name was William Heselrigg. I just double checked that because the spelling I'm not familiar with pronunciation. But I'll do my best. He then later on went to raise an army and beat the English at Stirling Bridge. And later he was called the Guardian of Scotland and leader of his armies. He was then defeated in the Battle of Falkirk in July 1298, and then later on fled to France. He returned back to Scotland in 1303, and then in 1305 a fellow Scot who he considered a friend named John de Monteith had handed him over to the crown. He was brought to London on the 22nd of August 1305, and then on the 23rd was the day of his execution. He got taken to Westminster Hall, where he was to continue talking about how he's going to have the crown on his head at some stage. It got taken to court because he was labelled a thief and an outlaw. He actually wasn't allowed to speak in the trial at all to defend himself in any way, and no one was allowed to speak on his behalf. Basically, it was just a formality. They'd already decided they wanted him gone because he was too troublesome for what they he was inspiring a nation to fight to defend what's theirs, and they wanted him out the picture, so they carried out his sentencing right away. He was stripped naked and drawn by 2 horses to the gallows. He was getting dragged down King Street in Smithfield now, which used to be called Smoothfield. The whole way he was getting dragged, everyone in London was throwing food, rotten meat, everything, random blood, whatever they had, garbage, horse dung at him. And then they took him to... He was hung by the halter, but let down while he was still alive, and they cut his genitals off. They also did a big gash in his stomach to allow his organs to come out, and his intestines and everything were now exposed. The person that was doing the cutting and taking out his organs, they were turning it into like a spectacle, so they would hold everything up to show the crowd, like, this is his liver, this is his, and it turned into a whole thing, and the crowd seemed to be loving it. I'm sure the people that loved him didn't, but it's pretty twisted. Everyone was cheering and keen to see more, which is messed up. But yeah, the executioner continued to do that. William Wallace was still very much alive while this is happening, and as they were holding up all the organs, he could see everything that was coming out. The executioner then put his hand into his chest and pulled out his heart while it was still beating, and then he had his head chopped off after that. His body was quartered and put in different towns around. So Newcastle had his right arm, his left arm was in Stirling, his right leg was in Berwick, and his left leg was in Perth. Total cost of the butchering costed 61 shillings and 10 pence was what they had charged the executioner for carrying out this ordeal. His head they had dipped in a pitch and put that on a spike on London Bridge, and that was that. To this day, I'm pretty sure it was only recently that Scotland actually got their independence, and this is basically what he was fighting for back then. So it sounds like a long time ago, but it's still relevant to today. And yeah, watch Braveheart if you haven't, because even though some of the stuff that happened in that movie isn't 100% accurate, it's a pretty good depiction to give you an idea of what they were dealing with and how colonization and ruling England taking over was pretty much, there was no choice but to rebel. But anyway, that's William Wallace. Stay safe.